Hi guys, Jared here, and I want to talk a little bit about some news that broke the other day. I've got it written down here so I don't screw anything up. Um, what's his name? Kazunori Sugiura, I think. Sorry if I'm totally butchering that name. He's a lead producer over at Capcom, and he gave an interview. I forget what it was. I think it was with Japanese magazine or whatever. And anyways, the news that came out of it was that he said that Capcom wants to reaffirm its presence in the fighting genre in 2014. Now, there's a lot of people who are saying that odds are that this is just talking about Ultra Street Fighter 4, but we know that Capcom has hired a team to start to like ramp up a new fighting game development team. And I mean, there's a lot of people who are saying, maybe this is going to be what is it, like Capcom All Stars or something like that. And I just wanted to chime in and just say what I think and maybe like talk a little bit about the business practices that Capcom's been doing lately and what have you. So basically, for those that don't know, I can't imagine you watching this channel and not knowing, but Capcom pretty much is responsible for basically all the big fighting booms that happened in the arcades from way back with the introduction of Street Fighter 2 all the way to more recently, not so much in the arcades, but just the resurgence of fighting games since Street Fighter 4. But there was a period in the, late 90s, early 2000s where Capcom went nuts with fighting games. Like they released literally maybe like a dozen fighting games in a span of 2 years. It was crazy. If anyone who owns a Dreamcast basically knows what I'm talking about, where you had like Street Fighter Alpha 3, you had Street Fighter 3, you had things like JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, you had what was it called, Project Justice, you had stuff like Power Stone. It was mental. You had tons and tons of games, and while they were all great fighters, the problem was that they were just released too close together. It was like back to back to back to back, and obviously, you couldn't have all these things selling particularly well because of that. But anyways, and then they went on a little bit of a hiatus until the big comeback with Street Fighter 4. And this generation, the big three ones they released were Street Fighter 4, Marvel vs. Capcom 3, and like more recently with Street Fighter Cross Tekken. Now, in between all that, they had a large amount of HD remakes for stuff like, well, all the way back to like the original Street Fighter 2s, to the Street Fighter Alpha series, to, what did we have? We even got Darkstalkers, if I'm not mistaken, like an HD remix of that. But again, like it's been a little bit front loaded there over the past couple of years, but ironically enough, in the last 2 years it's been really quiet. Capcom sort of like scaled back again. I think because they realized they were like overloading. They also had a lot of business practices that people were really questioning, stuff like the on-disc DLC. There was a whole thing with the gem system with Street Fighter Cross Tekken that a lot of people didn't really like and kind of were against. And so I like the fact that they started to scale back a little bit. They were like, you know what, we're just going to hold off just a bit and see what comes of Ultra Street Fighter 4. Now, I believe that like a lot of what Capcom's saying is for Ultra Street Fighter 4. For those that don't know, and they're wondering like why Capcom's releasing so many of these like I don't know what you want to call them, just like these updates or whatever. A lot of that has got to do with the tournaments and things like that, like the esports for fighting games. For the everyday user, the casual gamer, or even the hardcore gamer, but not the tournament player, just the ones that sit at home and play and have fun. What you might not know is that there's a lot of important little tweaks and updates that need to be made to these games. Now, of course, the argument is, why aren't these updates free? That goes beyond the scope of this little discussion, because honestly, there is work here. Someone's doing, adjusting the code and things like that. But Ultra Street Fighter 4 really is it's a big leap. Not only are all the characters been tweaked and modified, but we have new characters being added, we have new stages being added, and what have you. But financially speaking now, if we just veer off a little bit, Capcom's in dire straits right now. I mean, they have around $152 million in the bank, which sounds wonderful, but it's really not. For a corporation of their size, especially with their IPs that they control, 152 million really isn't much. And now we know that they've opened a mobile studio, and that might seem a little like odd, but if you look worldwide, the fastest growing sector in the video game industry right now are mobile games. That's where the money is at right now in terms of, just quick turnaround. So it makes sense, especially over in Asia. In Asia, the mobile scene is insane. The amount of money that is being poured into the mobile scene is just nuts. So, I mean, for us, if you're in North America and Europe, you might be questioning why games like Breath of Fire 6 are making their way exclusively to like iOS and things like that. But for a Japanese company, I mean, it makes sense, right? All the executives and even all the game designers and developers, they walk outside like the Capcom studio, and what do they see? They see millions of people playing on their mobile devices at all times. So, I mean, it makes sense. That just logically makes sense. But taking this all together, they got to be careful, is ultimately what's happening right now. They can't just release a game on the Xbox One and the PlayStation 4, or the Wii U for that matter, and just, can take chances left, right, and center. They've got to be very strategic here, because 150 million bucks in the bank really isn't much. And if they really want to continue to make games in the future here, they've got to have some hits. Now, we know Ultra Street Fighter 4 is definitely going to be a big game. But, I mean, they couldn't even port that to the next gen because they said they didn't have the resources available. Now, I don't know if that's necessarily true or if they're just trying to, like, say, oh, yeah, we're going to surprise you guys in 2014. But whatever the case is, that's what they publicly said, was that they don't have the resources available to do it. So, I don't know. I think moving forward, I believe that a lot of things are going to change. Right now, we're 99% sure that the Marvel vs. Capcom franchise is finished. That licensing agreement is over because all of the games have been pulled from the PlayStation Network and Xbox Live and what have you. That was a really annoying thing, though, that Capcom did. For those that remember, when they released Marvel vs. Capcom 3, 7 months later, they had Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3 out. It's stuff like that. I think that those business practices have damaged Capcom's reputation, especially like within the fighting genre. And so moving forward, if they want to reaffirm their position in the fighting genre, I think they're going to have to do something pretty special. I mean, like I said, Ultra Street Fighter 4 is a given. That's going to happen. If their only announcement they're going to make next year is that, oh yeah, we are bringing it to next gen, that wouldn't really be big news. And Street Fighter 4 is starting to like really taper off now. I mean, it was huge when it first hit as Street Fighter 4, but then we've had many. We had Super Street Fighter 4, we had Super Street Fighter 4 Arcade Edition. So, like in the fighting tournament, like arena stage, whatever, yeah, it's going to remain big. It's a huge popular game, but in terms of sales, it's really started to taper off now. And I think with Ultra Street Fighter 4, that really needs to be the last Street Fighter 4, just in terms of sales. They can't really rely on that too much now. But what do I think for the next game, or like this new announcement? Well, I mean, if Marvel vs. Capcom is indeed gone, then yeah, they're going to need something to fill in that void. But I don't know if Capcom vs. Capcom is really a realistic answer right now. I think that is inevitable, like an all-star Capcom fighting game, because especially if they can't continue to use the Marvel license moving forward, they're not going to want to keep developing games that can only be supported for a few years. That's not the way they work, as we can see with Street Fighter 4. That came out in 2009, I think, and it's almost 2014, so that's a lot of years of support for one game. So, I don't know. I'm not really sure what direction they're going to go. I mean, I would love to see another sequel to Rival Schools. I'd love to see Capcom versus SNK. I mean, SNK is another one. They had what, the King of Fighters 13, I think was the last one, and that's it. Then they were bringing on some game developers for a new fighting game, and what they teased was some 3D art. So what I'm sort of thinking SNK is going to do is pretty much a sort of like a Street Fighter 4 rendition, where they're going to take the King of Fighters, make them all 3D, but keep it on a 2D playing field. That's just me, taking a wild guess or whatever. But I'd love to see another Capcom versus SNK. I love those games when they were ported to the Dreamcast. They were awesome. But yeah, I don't know. I really don't know. This wasn't really a guess. I mean, there's Darkstalkers. I know a lot of people have been saying maybe we could get a new Darkstalkers game. But I really don't know, because they released the HD remix and it didn't do that well. So I don't know. I really don't know what Capcom could be working on in terms of a brand new fighting game. But what about you guys? What do you think? Do you think the big announcement for next year is going to be Ultimate Street Fighter 4, or do you think they're going to actually announce something new? Guaranteed, Ultimate Street Fighter 4 will be their big, or Ultra Street Fighter 4, or whatever the hell it's called, will be their big one coming out of next year. There's no question about that. But what the interview was saying, or at least what it was leading to, was saying that an announcement will at least be made for a new fighting game. So kind of curious what you guys think. Do you think it's just going to be the Street Fighter 4, or do you think we can finally see something new? And what would you like to see Capcom work on? And what will it take for Capcom to sort of like get your confidence back? I'd really like to hear what you guys think about this. So, as always, thanks for watching, guys. I'll be back soon with another video. Take care, everyone.
Do